this toxic stew that exists of all the rhetoric of dehumanization, of making people seem less worthy of life that are different than you. I think it's been, quite honestly, it's surprising we don't have more of this.
Exactly.
Because again, I mean, when when you value life, only the life that looks like you, speaks like you, prays like you, then everybody else is an enemy. And we live in a society where enemies now deserve everything, including death. So yeah, I think it's very clear that rhetoric has an impact. I think it's very clear that we need, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, it shouldn't even matter, but we've got to just somehow, as a nation, as like humans, to get back into this, like, people have value.
Yeah.
And I've got to say this, being from the old right, I will say, the normal right, we used to talk about the value of human life. We would do that in the context of abortion.
Yeah.
They have dehumanized people so much. It's just incredible, Frank. And I think the only way out of this is not going to be to look to political leaders to do anything, because they just reflect, what people want. It's going to have to come from us, from our heart. And I think, quite honestly, the next generation, which I guess we can call it the next generation, but they're starting to take power, like the Gen Zers. I think they have done a much better job than our generation of rejecting hate on social media. They practice it, but in many cases they reject it too. So it's going to be on them to change it.
Yeah, I agree. Clearly, look, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not yet heard the president issue a statement on the shooting yesterday. Am I missing something? Have you seen anything?
Nope, sure haven't.
I mean, and I think I know enough to engage in some informed conjecture, which is, my guess is he's probably not liking what he's hearing from law enforcement right now.
That's right. That's right.
I think he's being briefed. And I think just going on public statements from the chief and from the FBI head there in San Diego, my guess is he's being told, hey, boss, this is not good for us.
Yeah. And by the way, Frank, think how quick they were to talk about the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, to play the victim. And I want to be clear, I think that guy intended probably to go after the president. Terrible person, all the caveats there. Yeah. But I think in reality, the president was not in imminent danger. There were different floor, there's all that, but it doesn't excuse it.
No.
But they were very quick to jump on and say, we need to build a ballroom now.
Right.
So it's not that he has some lack of information or that he waits for all the facts.
Yeah. And, we're going to talk in just a little bit about your children's book called That's What Heroes Do, which I picked up for my grandkids. But, we saw a hero yesterday. We saw a security guard at the Islamic Center sacrifice his life for children's lives. And now the police are saying they're convinced that he got in the way. Or there would have been more death. And so we'll chat about that. A couple of other disturbing things about this shooting yesterday, other than I haven't heard a word from senior GOP leaders, is the age. You mentioned the age of the suspects, likely 17 and or 18. And my career in the FBI, Adam, was focused a lot on radicalization to violent jihad on the international terrorism side. So this makes perfect sense if you look at it through that lens of radicalization. But it's disturbing that now we're talking about a couple of American kids, one of them whom appears to have a Hispanic surname, and we're talking about it in the context of domestic terrorism violence. That's brutal. And the other disturbing thing, Adam, I've got to say is I'm now at the point where I don't know if we're going to get the true story out of our FBI. I just don't.
Look, this is what's crazy is, and you as a FBI guy, you understand the importance of, your word, right? The importance of when the FBI used to come out and say something, you would know that it's true as far as they know. Maybe they don't have all the facts, but they were going to get to the bottom of it. I mean, the fact that, and the Trumpers will go after people that are critical of what's going on in Iran, for instance. And, Iran puts out these amazing memes like the Lego memes and fight the information warfare very well. And this administration gets mad when people question why this war is happening or question whether or not they're telling the truth. But that's what happens when you lie all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And so it creates a real crisis of confidence where we don't know if what the FBI is telling us is true or not. We don't know how to react from this because we don't know who to trust anymore. And that, I think, is creating this kind of soup of confusion that we live in, this like almost nihilism that we live in is because we just don't know who to trust. And unfortunately, the people that you should trust have proved themselves to be untrustworthy, the administration.
I actually think it's part of the desired objective, not only eroding our institutions and hollowing them out. And boy, is that becoming glaringly true for the CDC right now as we face a major Ebola outbreak in Africa. Yeah. News this morning that there's an American who is at least exposed, if not positive, for Ebola in Africa. And we've hollowed out the CDC. We don't have a CDC director. We don't have a Surgeon General. We're missing 80 senior executive roles throughout HHS. 70 epidemiologists have been let go. Yeah, it's an absolute mess, and we don't know who to listen to or who to trust.
And by the way, why is the CDC so underfunded? Because of DOGE. How much money did DOGE actually save? Nothing. What did we do? We've destroyed our reputation on the world stage. We've turned our back on the most vulnerable so that we can build a ballroom and give Donald Trump more tax breaks. And I've got to tell you, this is coming from an old school conservative. The idea that we need to be giving more tax breaks to billionaires and millionaires, I mean, we could do a whole session on that at a time when we have a record debt and deficit, at a time where we really do need to spend money, whether it's modernizing our military or whether it's, again, helping folks and things like what's going on in Africa. It's not just about being nice to people in Africa, Frank. It's about protecting ourselves. And let me throw one more thing out there, which is on this shooting, these men are 18, 19, 17 years old, whatever they are. Can't we all agree at least on one thing, which is let's raise the age to purchase weapons nationwide to 21 years old? That's a very basic thing. When I was in Congress, we raised the national age to purchase cigarettes to 21. Cigarettes.
Yeah.
But yet we can't find agreement that maybe you should be 21 years old to buy a long gun. I mean, in some states, Frank, you can buy an AR-15 before you can buy a pistol.
For sure.
Is that right?
I mean, that came up with the Uvalde school shooting in Texas and others. And look, I think there's wiggle room for the hunting families out there to say, okay, a shotgun, okay, fine. Grandpa's hunting rifle, fine. But yeah, if we're going to talk about semi-automatic and potentially fully automatic long guns, no.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I didn't mean to derail us into this, but I will say, like, when I was in and I was talking about, this kind of thing, people would be like, well, how do you define the difference between a long gun, a shotgun, and an AR? The difference is, a vertical grip versus horizontal. I'm like, listen, if we can't write in a law the difference between buying like an AR or a single shot, 12 gauge, you can't do mass shootings with 12 gauges. And I mean, these are just really basic things that we can do that unfortunately we're such in our corners that we don't.
No, it's and better than I, money controls, gun money, NRA money controls decision making. And yeah, look, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the guy, thank God the guy had a shotgun because I don't know why, but buckshot doesn't really do a whole lot.
It's not the weapons you need to go into with that, but it worked out because he obviously ended up being a little less lethal than he could have been.
Exactly.